the people of Guam, alongside the United States Department of Homeland Security, the Office of the Attorney General of Guam will have its AG criminal investigators, formally presented with 287G credential badges by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. With these credentials, our AG investigators are deputized as federal immigration agents, allowing the AG's office, working alongside ICE, to identify, detain, and remove non-U.S. citizen criminals who commit and are convicted of deportable crimes. This effort is part of AG Moylan's Criminal Alien Deportation Initiative, which focuses on expelling from Guam and the United States those non-U.S. citizens whose criminal conduct hurt the people of Guam, in coordination with the Trump administration. This remains an important project of AG Moylan's administration as the toughest AG on crime. Before we proceed, I'd like to acknowledge the panel joining us for today. Of course, from the Office of the Attorney General, we are joined by the Attorney General of Guam, Douglas B. Moylan. Let's give a round of applause. Joining us from the United States Department of Homeland Security, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is Agent Rodney Sayama, Supervisory Detention and Deportation Officer with Enforcement and Removal Operations, San Francisco Field Office, Guam Sub-Office. Let's give him a round of applause. It's a long title, Agent Sayama. All right. Of course, let's not forget the star of the show that are joining us here today, our AG criminal investigators, 11 of which are joining us here today, led by lead investigator William A.K. Salisbury. Let's give them a round of applause. Yes, all right. So following the opening remarks, we will open the panel to questions from the media, especially those who might be joining us via live stream. They're able to leave their comments for our team to ask to the Attorney General and the panel present. Questions will be addressed to the members of the Office of the Attorney General present here today. We will then proceed with a photo opportunity after the Q&A, which will then conclude today's media event. Now at this time, it is my honor to welcome to the podium for his opening remarks, the Attorney General of Guam, Douglas B. Moylan. Let's give him a round of applause.
Alpha Day, everybody, and especially a warm welcome to Agent Rodney Sayama. The event today is intended to announce and to coordinate a law enforcement activity. All of us, and especially the elected AG, are the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Guam and the Chief Legal Officer of Guam. As you know, the prosecution and the civil duties are combined, like in the U.S. Attorney General and maybe 4 states and all territories of the United States. The duties are twice what you would normally see in most of the states of our union. Now, I wanted to go over a lot of what is occurring in our community these days. We have the national and we have the territorial local events that have shaped many of our lives. From the Guam community, we have a group of non-U.S. citizens that for decades has been allowed to be within the United States, and Guam being the closest jurisdiction is normally the I guess ground level that has to deal with what you get when you have a dissimilar community coming into a Western community. We on Guam saw that 500 years ago when the Spanish colonizers, as well as I guess the Portuguese, Magellan was a Portuguese, I'm informed, came to Guam, came to our area, and brought and modernized us into what the Western culture is. Now that's not to say the Western culture is the best culture, but it is the operating system that all of us use in order to live our lives. The Judeo-American, Judeo-Christian / westernized culture, all of it coming from Europe, so to speak, into an Asian point of view, this area of the world. What complicates the matter is that you have islands that have been really players in world history. The World War II was the most recent event. Well, I guess you can include Korea, Vietnam conflict. But 500 years ago when the Spanish came here, they brought education, they brought schools, education, and religion in a form of government to us, especially Guam and the Philippines. The FSM doesn't have that background. Now, having said that, the purpose of the meeting here is to join with the federal government through the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, and ICE, specifically the Immigration and Customs Enforcement law enforcement group that is tasked with ensuring that people that are in the United States illegally are removed to protect, and that's the important thing here, to protect we who are not only just American citizens, and I think that is the most important part, but also the non-US citizens that are here legally. The importance of what we're doing today, and the reason why this dog and pony show is going right now, this is a political office whether anybody likes it or not. You in our community, we in our community elect an attorney general to be the chief law enforcement officer. That requires that the client of the attorney general, which is all of you out there, and especially the ones that vote and select an attorney general, understand from their attorney what is going on and what types of legal representation are being provided. The importance of what we're doing today is we're informing everybody in the community what we're doing and how they can assist us in ensuring that this community is safer through joint efforts like what we're going to be talking about today. The MOU, the Memorandum of Agreement between DHS, ICE, and the Attorney General's Office and the people of Guam, quite frankly, are to ensure that we're safer. That's the bottom line. It's not about liking, not liking people. It's not about whether or not we want to have certain races among us. And I will digress to say that all of us are mutts. All of us are a melting pot of different cultures. There is no Chamorro that originated on Guam. The Chamorros came from Asia, most likely. I think Malaysia is where they've traced some of the DNA from. But as a unified people of Guam, we're all Guamanians. We all want to be happy, we all want to be living in peace, and we all need to be safe. That comes from the due process right in our US Constitution. It also talks about the pain and suffering that we as law enforcers see daily, and which you guys can actually see in the newspaper when you read the 1,000 and different ways that crimes are occurring on Guam. And I'll tell you as a practitioner of 30 years plus that our calendars are full of non-US citizens that are not just repeat offenders, but now, because of the low price of meth, are becoming meth addicts. And that's one of the worst things that you can have is a meth addict, given the experience that the world has seen with that destructive drug. Very low probability of full recoveries, and always the chance that they're going to relapse back into that addictive, highly addictive synthetic drug. On Guam, we've experienced violent crimes, which include murders, rapes, robberies, assaults, as well as your nonviolent crimes, which many of us have experienced in our villages, such as the thefts that occur. We have, in this term of Attorney General, the two greatest problems from the general crimes from our prosecution function are the repeat criminals and the meth addicts, and there's overlap between the two. The problem we're experiencing is that the price of the meth has gone so low that the traditional problem you experience with immigrants coming into a culture, which is normally the substances and the low income, is that they're becoming meth addicts. The non-US citizens have moved from alcohol and other drugs to meth because of the low price of that drug. And again, as I said, it creates the repeat criminal and then a persistent burden upon we taxpayers and people and having to deal with the ill effects of the criminality, especially the crime victims. When we say crime victims, that word is often lost in its meaning. What I'd like to say first is that we're future crime victims. And I think they're doing a remake of that Tom Cruise movie. I think Steven Spielberg was the director on that. But the future crime, the idea that you may be sitting here today as a citizen and enjoying your life, and literally tomorrow you could be murdered, killed, raped, family members robbed. That's what we're dealing with today. That's the seriousness of what we're going to be talking about on this MOU with the DHS ICE. Also, make no bone about it, it's criminal aliens. And that category includes anyone that has broken our laws and has not a U.S. citizen. By the word alien, not a U.S. citizen, and that's how we've termed it. And I'm not going to make any bone about it. It's the Chukis that have filled our court dockets with the cases that have occurred from the illegality. And the Chukis are one state within the Federated States of Micronesia. But what do you see when you look at the Federated States of Micronesia? You don't see the problems with the capital of Micronesia, or I'm sorry, Federated States of Micronesia. You don't see necessarily the problems with Kosrae and Yapese, although we see a certain portion. You see Chuk. What is the problem with Chuk? They're not as educated as other islands within the FSM. The lack of resources, and that's why I've always said to the federal government that they should invest money into Chuk for schools, to educate them so they have the tools to live in our Western society. But until such time as we deal with that, and that's generational, right? It takes a whole lifetime to start from elementary to high school. We have to deal with the fallout. And by the way, the example is the American Indian experience. When the United States was exercising that Monroe Doctrine from East Coast to West Coast, when they took all the properties, the problem was the American Indians because they were not used to the westernized culture that was taking over. So whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, this is the environment that we're living in, and how do we protect our community on a real-time basis in our lifetimes so that we can enjoy our lives and move on to bigger things, educate our kids, go to, have them go to college, and enjoy a prosperity that we as American citizens hope for. The AG's office, in cooperation with ICE, has to date identified and either deported or are in the process of deporting, and I'm talking about our administration on this AG's office since January 2, 2023, 110 criminal aliens. We have, as an Attorney General's office, used our laws, which includes 9 GCA, where the senators have under section 80.37.2, have made a policy statement that all government officials should encourage the deportation of criminal aliens, okay? This isn't something that the AG Moylan administration made up, but it is something that we've put into an actual category and decided to exert our resources in order to help DHS, ICE, and especially Agent Sayama, who, when I came in, was the point person and has worked with all of us, and I'm including the Department of Corrections, the courts, especially the law enforcement officers, whether it's the police, Guam Police Department, or the Guam Customs, conservation officers, you name it. Anyone that is a peace officer by definition, which is all prosecutors and all AG investigators by definition, we're all working together to create a safer community to stop the pain and suffering that's occurring from criminals. Now, this advertising campaign, for lack of a better word, what do you see when you see a billboard? From my perspective, I see an attorney communicating with our client. From the non-attorney perspective, from those in the community, I offer up to you that they see something that they can either react to or join in. And I think that the idea that the criminals are fearful of law enforcement and those law-abiding people respect what's going on in our community because they understand when you have a safe community, you have people, kids that can go to school without having problems. You have family members that can go into a parking lot without fear of being assaulted, murdered, raped, you name it, robbed. That is what the billboards mean is a message to the community, but especially, and this is what's nationwide considered, the deterrent effect. When you see sheriffs, police departments, district attorneys, attorney generals, and whoever in the states as you're driving those highways, and you see those large billboards, look at the messages that they're trying to put in them. They're trying to, and especially from law enforcers, to create a deterrent message so that we don't have to hurt people by taking them away from their families and sending them back to their country. We lose some significance when we say criminal aliens are being deported. Finish the sentence. You're being deported back to your country of origin. You're being deported back to your home. Until you become a U.S. citizen, your home remains the place that you came to America from. And that is what our office is doing along with DHS ICE. And again, I have nothing but positive things to say about Agent Sayama, this President Trump administration, and everybody involved in it. And we literally, in December, early December, met with Kathy Makaina from Hawaii and San Francisco, regional director of our area, to discuss how we can better help the federal government effectuate the law, federal law, and how we can help ourselves by having a safer community. Now, very briefly, everything that the AG's office is doing is not just under ICE and the federal laws. We have, with my team of professionals, legal professionals, developed pre- and post-judgment types of resolutions that involve not only the assisting ICE on their deportable offenses, but also working with defense attorneys and the criminal aliens themselves for a self-deportation effort. Self-deportation means that the defendant, the alien, the criminal alien, can literally choose to leave Guam and to never come back, and quite frankly, the United States. The gold standard is DHS ICE. DHS ICE provides full coverage that does not allow anyone that's removed ever to come back within the United States, period. They get stopped, they get taken to a facility if they try to get into our borders, into the United States, which includes Guam, obviously. With our program, we get their consent, we get the judges, and this is where I do a shout out to our judges, please join the Attorney General in making our community safer. Stop giving us resistance, because that resistance results in pain and suffering that results in people becoming crime victims. Not only the current ones, but future ones. And I'm not even touching the Department of Corrections and how much it's costing we, the taxpayers out there, each one of us having to fork over more money to DMV, to taxes, to everything because of the criminal aliens and what they're doing to this community. So our program, pre- and post-judgment, working with ICE on detainers, not working with ICE and because a criminal defendant may not fall within one of their categories, or they may not be convicted yet, gives us the ability, and conversations with Christine Tenorio come to mind, rack up the charges, maximum penalties, and then release them back to their country, and then hit a bench warrant on all points of entry. Because, you know, in the federal database, you put a bench warrant on, it's going to show up somewhere if that person tries to get back in. They may not be stopped by ICE, but they'll be stopped by Customs because you have a bench warrant. They'll take you into custody. They'll call up the AG's office and say, what do you want done with this individual? And what we would do is say, bring him back to Guam. We're going to put him in the pokey again at DOC. And like Christine just negotiated with a plea agreement, pre-judgment, I think it was 7 life sentences, Corrine? Yeah, 7 life sentences. You don't think that's a great deterrent to that person? And again, with our creative thinking and the lawyers in our office, the bench warrant is the most effective way. So I asked the judiciary to join us in making this community safer. There was a case that we had to appeal. We were forced to appeal. And this is in an era when you have the defense attorney, you have the criminal alien, and then you have the AG's office all saying to the judge, please release this person so that we can have a safer community, no future crime, if the person's pardoned, whatever. And then one less person to pay for it. Let me talk about what it costs for all of us. And we're not talking federal money, we're talking out of our pockets, the territory of Guam. $118 a day. That's how much Major Anton Ogden up at DOC calculated, and this is about 6 months to a year figure, that amount comes up to $43,070 a year just to incarcerate one criminal alien. $43,070, and we're just talking of 1 year. If that person has a 10-year sentence, times it by 10. Under my calculations, if we just use the 78 who are gone right now, all of you in this room that are from this AG's office, we've saved the Guam taxpayers $3,359,460 per year with those 78 that have been taken out by ICE. That's the type of figures. 3.3 million. Think about how many potholes that could fix in a village, because we're always being told the federal government will not pay for the villages, Dededo, where I live. My tires, my suspension, my steering are all shot because potholes and speed bumps. You go to the States, you never see that BS. You see it on Guam every day. We're living like it's normal. That type of money that we're talking about can go to improve our quality of life. Just think about what that can be done. And by the end of the, if we got the 110 out, and that's why I say, those people that are waiting at DOC, I went in there and worked with the defense attorneys, prosecutors. We literally, my team, put flyers at Department of Corrections inviting those defendants, those criminal defendants, to contact their defense attorneys and call us. We literally had, and Karine can tell you that, we literally had, I think about 3 or 4 that would call us daily saying they can't get a hold of their defense attorney, they want to take part of the program, they want to get out of DOC and back to their home country. And that's the post-judgment type of work we're doing. Because under ICE, you cannot get out of DOC. ICE will only arrest when the local government releases that individual from incarceration. There's no statute that allows ICE to say we have a detainer, this person's going to serve the next 10 to 20 years there, that ICE can go in and release that person. It needs the Attorney General's office working with the defense attorney and our judges to allow that to happen. So, and Karine, how many do we have to date?
4.
For the release from DOC post-judgment? Judges have signed?
We've had over 5 of them already conducted, and we still have 2 that are pending.
Right, and we have several where the ongoing discussions with the defense attorneys are going on. That's what saves us money. That's what allows the judge to sign off on an order to allow the defendant to get outside the prison, and that's where people like Major Anton Ogden call up ICE, coordinate with Agent Sayama, and then have them picked up, taken to the facility in their plane, and they're out of here. And then they're logged in the computers that they are never to return. So this is not a easy subject to discuss because it has so much dimension on the importance of this project, this program, and let's talk about that program. The memorandum of agreement that is distributed, and we'll put it online, was signed by myself, representing the people of Guam, and Madison Sheehan, the Deputy Director of the Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. That agreement is intended to not only create the coordination between the feds and the local government, but to allow anyone that has either a detainer or a warrant issued by ICE, that my officers, which are 11 investigators, AG investigators, to work under the direction of Agent Sayama and his team in order to pick those guys up. And I'm talking about at court hearings. You guys saw what happened, I think it was in Wisconsin or Michigan, when a judge was arrested for interfering with the federal government. The Supremacy Clause reigns supreme in the United States. You do not violate the law of the land, which all of us have agreed to living in the Constitution. If any local official, including judges, do not follow the ICE detainer and the ICE warrants, they will have to go across the street and answer to the federal system. So When I asked my team to engage in discussions with finding out how we can be a 287G Attorney General's office, I envision that all those people, that all you guys are working so hard to prepare for trials, to execute search warrants, to do the arrest warrants, those sorts of things, why would we want to do that when we have ICE that can literally arrest them before we take these guys to trial, where I've got these defense attorneys doing a pileup on my limited prosecutors so that they can try to win on a technicality? That is not how I see using this Attorney General's office. Our resources must be spent protecting us and every which way that we can do that. The vision that I see is that our AG investigators would identify, and right now, and I thank Aaron Root for streamlining to make sure that Agent Sayama has all the data that he needs. We find a person that can be deported before that pretrial conference, before that trial, and that's one less stressor on my team, one less stressor on the people of Guam having to pay for 10 more prosecutors to manage the calendars that have all these non-US citizens on them. I kid you not. As a defense attorney, when I was looking at the daily calendar, most all of them on some of the, like Presiding Judge Lamarena, most all of those names were not only non-US names, but because I was appointed to many of them, they came from families of non-US citizens that just didn't get it living in America. So to have my officers arrest, working with ICE, and it would only be under the Memorandum of Agreement, is very clear that our direction will come from Agent Sayama and his team. That is what I expect of our investigators, and towards the end result, that we make Guam safer and stop the pain and suffering of our people. And one more comment on that. Do you guys realize that in my 33 years here, we've been playing a defensive game in this government? Where is the economic prosperity that you find when you go to the United States on Guam? Because of our governors, because of our leaders' inability to provide for a great living environment in terms of economic prosperity, we're still fighting the dregs of the universe. People that your life can instantly change in a moment. You talk to that Korean tourist that was killed trying to defend his wife, his family. You talk to that Valentine's Day murder, the meth epidemic that's going on in Guam. We're not even talking about having your kids come back and have a profession, have something other than tourism on Guam. Military and tourism, military and tourism, military and tourism. That's all I've ever heard all my life. And it's always gone bird flu, chicken flu, whatever flu. Tourism goes right down the tubes. And the most recent one was COVID. We're not even talking about diversifying our economic base so that our quality of life can improve. We're talking about foolish people that come to Guam thinking that they're going to ruin our quality of life. I've had it as an elected official, as your Attorney General, and I will use everything that I can do. And if ICE is one of the areas that I can tap into to make our life safer, then so be it. So I think it would be productive at this point, the questions and answers, and I welcome my team here. You guys are the nuts and bolts of this. You guys are the ones that have to work with the Attorney General's legal policies, our interfacing with ICE on figuring out how we can better serve this community. And by the way, remember, these are not federal prisoners we're going after. These are not people that are breaking federal laws, so to speak, like killing a federal officer, stuff like that. These are people that are breaking our local laws, okay? That's the interface that people got to realize. When a crime is committed, all the murder, rape, thefts that are occurring, that's local law. That's not federal law, okay? So, but the nice thing is the federal law and the treaty of the COFA Treaty allows us to do the deportations. Guam doesn't experience what they're seeing in the States, and this is another nuance you should be aware of. Those people that jump the border in the United States, they're per se illegals because they didn't go through DHS and getting vetted into Guam. Our people were allowed to come into Guam and broke the treaty. And the treaty required that they follow the laws of Guam. So we're in a situation now that our office is taking the next step to protect our community. Having said this, questions? Investigators, you guys know exactly what's going to happen?
Question.
Yes. And by the way, Officer Sayama, I'll leave it up to him to decide if he wishes to interject, but I respect that, whether he wishes to remain silent as well.
Now, once they're deported, can they ever come back to U.S.?
Very good question. See, all my team has to understand the importance of that question. That is one of the top questions that especially the deportees will want to know. The gold standard is ICE. When they issue a detainer or they arrest somebody under a warrant, they cannot come back in because that's federal law, plus they control all borders in the United States. So that's why I call it the gold standard. They try to come in and a lot of people kind of throw out there, oh, they'll just change their names. Yeah, right. You know how hard it is to do that? You know, especially, I'm sure they've got the, what is it, DNA testing or whatever, the biometrics that are being implemented these days. Eye scans, it's not just a fingerprint anymore. That type of protection under the gold standard of DHS is one category. The other category is if we deport somebody under an agreement and with the judge's blessings, we always put a bench warrant on them. ICE may not have a detainer for them preventing their reentry, but the government of Guam will, and the Attorney General's office will. That means that pedophile that was given 7 life sentences, he comes back into Guam, he'll be immediately taken before a judge, and then the judge will impose sentence, which is put him back at DOC, and he can rot there. That's the 2-tiered type of protection that we're providing right now. And our minds are open for additional creative ways of protecting our community. Remember, the best way to protect us is to cause deterrence. When you have this, yeah, whatever, make fun of them. What's the most effective thing when you're in high school? It's when everybody laughs at you, right? What is the most effective thing that you get when you're in a family, especially those of us that like to think of ourselves as Chamorro, Guamanian, Filipino, Asian, whatever? Your grandparents, when you're at a family party, Christmas, Thanksgiving, and they're shunning you or looking at you because you just hurt somebody and made the front page of the newspaper. Do you guys know what England did in common law England, merry old England, when they executed somebody, the public hanging? They left the body to rot. Why? Because that was part of their view of deterrence, okay? When you put a billboard, that's nothing compared to what history has seen on stopping people from breaking that country's laws, okay? So we have the deport air and we have the purge that we're putting out there, and to my left, you guys see the reels we're doing. All that is intended to change behavior. That is what I want, to change behavior, right? Isn't that what all you guys want? You want to punish somebody? I prefer not to punish. It's expensive. It's not very nice to do to people, but some people need that.
I do have one question, but this is a question. Thank you so much. You mentioned earlier about the Korean tourist who died trying to protect his wife.
Yes.
So my twofold question is as follows. Number one, is that individual punished here on Guam? Do they serve their sentence here? If not, when they are deported, how does the AG's office ensure that they're answering for their crime wherever they're deported back to?
Excellent questions. Okay, let's make a actual clarification. The person, the gentleman that died, the Korean gentleman that was killed by a local Guamanian. So I use that as an example because we have other situations where people have been killed by criminal aliens. But taking what you said there, okay, it is a policy decision, a legal policy decision that this AG has made. When you can't afford a prison, since I took office and you guys started serving under my term to protect all of us out there, by the way, our prison is now overcrowded, according to DOC. And it started getting overcrowded on January 2, 2023. I think it was within the first 6 months they were crying overcrowd. That's because toughest AG on crime, and that's just not a slogan, it's go back to your basics and teach people what it is to break the law. Now, your question says, what guarantee do you have to provide the punishment part of it, right? As attorneys, I think there's 4 factors we normally look at: punishment, restitution, and there's a fourth one, which I'll probably remember. The idea is, in terms of law enforcement and the sentencing guideline, when you can't afford a prison and you're facing possible lawsuits in court, which takes away from my team, by the way, when I got to send a civil attorney fighting the habeas corpuses and things like that, you balance it. If you can't afford a prison, and we've got a criminal justice system that's overloaded right now, get them out of here, save us the money so we can put it into the prison. That $3 million a year, up to $4 million once we get the 110 out, that would do wonders for building a bigger prison. And I'm sorry, I'm of the opinion, when you have criminals, you build a bigger prison. You don't let those criminals out in the community, like this governor has tried to do several times. Didn't even attend the last meeting that she called, because it was absurd from a law enforcement perspective. Don't let them out, because it's not that I want to hurt and punish them, it's because I want to protect you. You let that person out, guess who they're going after? Because there are a bunch of meth addicts up there that are going to go after you, and they don't care about a piece of paper. So, short answer, whatever their country wants to do to them is up to them. But by the way, some of these guys we're sending back to these nations, you don't think that those guys are going to violate their laws too? Have you seen the rap sheets on some of these people? You don't think that they're going to have an epiphany and find God when they go back to Chuk or they go back to wherever country they're from? They're going to break their laws like they've broken our laws, and there's no difference. You lock animals up and people that act like animals. Okay? And you can quote me on that.
A couple of insights for you. First of all, I think Karine might have mentioned, or maybe it was you, that we had about 111, deportations?
Right,
Is
we
that
have
right?
78 actual, and Agent Sayama, he's in the process of taking care of the other ones. And some of them are in DOC, hence my trying to get them out of DOC and into their custody.
Well, my question has to do with, the viewer might think, oh, that's a small number, relativity, but we are a small population. So that is actually a pretty large percentage when you
Yes.
consider that. And then my second point has to do with the people that are being targeted by ICE. We are at the, what is it called, the spear?
Tip of the spear.
The tip of the spear.
Farthernmost western possession.
Right, and we are in Asia, and there's no, we all know that there are threats that surround us, and that's another
Well,
objective
that's
as well.
an excellent comment there, because with federal ICE, we're not even talking Guam's significance in the Pacific, that my grandfather, my dad, used to say in the 1950s that you couldn't get into Guam without getting the admiral literally to sign off on your leaving or coming into Guam. And I think that's even before 1950, because that's when the people of Guam became U.S. citizens. Before that, I don't believe we had U.S. citizenship. Guam is a security installation for the tip of the spear, for the military, for the safety of the United States. So the idea that we have criminal aliens coming into Guam, and I keep on citing the governor had better watch those waters, because we had it starting in 2022. Chinese coming on boats and coming in at night, Where was the National Guard with their detection equipment? Where was the coordination? The governor getting the military, because I'm sure those military guys with their radar know exactly what boats are on the water. Where was that coordination? Our community has been failed. We're suffering from the sins of our leaders, and right now, that's an excellent point. That's the idea that we're just talking about a segment of the community that's breaking our local laws. But what about the one that's going to put a bullet in the stealth bomber that's going to prevent that thing from flying in a time of need? Guam is so important to the U.S. strategy of deterrence and preservation of peace in this area of the world. So as a local territorial official, that amplifies and kind of puts it in perspective. You take out that Guam Power Authority, you know how long it is to make a generator throughout the world? Once you destroy a generator, it's like 3 years to manufacture the base loads that they need. You blow up one of Guam's generators, Air Force and Big Navy, no more local power. That's the threat that's coming from the criminal alien, and we're talking international criminal, right? When you're blowing up, sabotaging infrastructure. So, again, your serving in this office is important towards understanding our role, not only in the local government, but in the world affairs. And DHS ICE is one of the local, territorial, federal officials that helps us make for a safer community.
Hi, sir. We have some questions coming from online from the Candid News Group. First question here, is there a list of people who qualify for deportation, and will the ICE deputized AG investigators be conducting searches for apprehension and removal from Guam?
That's a very good question. Under the memorandum agreement, there's certain sections that have been highlighted, and I believe it's section 5. All our investigators, please reference that. Under Roman numeral 5, it identifies about 8 categories of assistance that the Attorney General's office and our AG investigators will be expected to render assistance to the ICE agents, the ICE officers, from helping to draft certain charging documents to arresting and taking into custody individuals that ICE identifies and then basically follows ICE's instructions on what to do with that individual. So, other parts of that question?
Will the investigators be conducting searches and apprehensions and removal?
Yes, that is within the scope of the memorandum of agreement between DHS ICE and the government of Guam. And I know all of you have extensive experience in Felix Manglonia. I was just reminded, 45 years, right, Wack? 45 years as a law enforcement officer. And that's something to be proud of, and thank you, Felix, for remaining with us. This is our problem we're having with the post and all these things that are required to make us law enforcement officers from the ground type forces that we're talking about here. But the full spectrum of getting these people out of our community, from going into the villages on a duly identified individual that DHS ICE identifies, working with them. And by the way, this isn't new. We've had drug raids. I'm sure that in your guys' history, and I'm speaking to the investigators, you've done joint operations, search warrants, ICE raids. I know the court likes to get everybody together for purposes of when I was a staff attorney, I believe it was maybe ICE or one of the federal agencies would call up the marshals and ask for their assistance. Because usually in every jurisdiction in the United States, you don't have the full law enforcement force you would normally have what the locals have. So again, this is a political statement, a legal policy of this Attorney General that we are 100%, actually 110% behind the Trump administration and our president's desire that we be safe in our community.
More questions from Candid. Did ICE represent to the AG or otherwise to the government of Guam that it does not have enough resources here to conduct these activities?
In fact, it's just the opposite. We don't have enough resources to deal with the number of criminals in our community. And again, I alluded to what I just said. As a defense attorney, that criminal docket is filled with a lot of non-US citizens, from DUIs and you name it, family violence and so forth. You take out one of those people, and again, I'm speaking as a defense attorney with 33 years, you're going to see exponential better quality of life. Because not only will that person no longer be coming back and forth, revolving door, that sort of thing that we see at the court, they're not going to hurt other people. And then, what do you think is the most stark example? And I'll tell you this on this billboard over here. You know how many calls I got when this billboard went up? What is that, 66 at the time? I'm sorry, this was at about a year or so ago. 40 were identified. You know how many people were coming up to us and saying they knew this guy? That's my uncle? Stuff like that. That is the type of deterrence that we get. Because unless you want to be like your uncle or your cousin, you better respect us in this community. And that's why I like to use that word. Repent, reform, respect. By the way, I'm not religious. But I mean, repent has different meanings to it. That if people respect us, that they're not going to break our laws. If you guys were in Chuk, FSM, you name it, you guys, when in Rome, you must do what the Romans do, right? That's the saying. You guys break the law over there, you don't think one of the things they're going to do to you is ship you back to your country? But they probably have the resources to keep you locked up for a few years. What was that in Singapore, I heard? Somebody was with marijuana, identified as distributing marijuana. They executed that American citizen. I think my facts were right, within the past 5 years. You need to follow the rules of who you go to. You got to respect that community.
Sir, a few more questions from Candid. Is there a plan to conduct these activities in a way that does not cause the racial profiling and violation of civil rights we're seeing throughout the country?
Okay, so everybody likes to twist this, and by the way, Candid is an excellent medium for bringing these issues out. We need to talk about this as a community, as a people of Guam. The idea of racial profiling, who said racial profiling? There's not one word that has come out of this office that we are going only after a certain race. I will tell you what we're seeing, and let the figures and facts speak for themselves. That's why I said Chuk. You look at the number of people on the criminal court calendar, on where they're from, you'll see Chuk all over the place. The last 10 years, I can tell you. Legislative Council for 6 years. All the senators had to deal with the immigrant migration, from the hospital to education to law enforcement. The amount of money, that's the reimbursement we keep on asking the federal government for, right? Hawaii, the West Coast, everybody's saying, you opened up these guys coming into our nation, and we are paying for it, and you're not paying us for what we're having to deal with. Okay, separate conversation on that. I don't know where any of these people are coming from until I look at their documents. We, in this part of the world, are normally melanin browner than the people in the States. But I'll tell you, they're not all from Chuk on this, because I had that checked with my team. I believe Palau and the Philippines maybe. There's other areas, but you don't see the numbers that we're seeing right now. The numbers that we're seeing are coming from Chuk, the FSM. And the capital of Chuk, Pohnpei, right? I've never seen anyone from Pohnpei that I can remember that was in the criminal docket. Why? Because that's their capital, and that's where all their resources are being spent. That's where they're educated, that's where they follow the law, and so forth. And I've always admired Palau. Palau, the German government was in Palau. They were brought into the Western world by the Germans. A lot of the names are German. That's the local type of history that you need to see and live in this area of the world to understand what we as a people, island people, are experiencing. And again, it's just, we don't want to be hurt. That's the bottom line here.
Just two more questions from Candid. How will the deputized investigators' time on this initiative affect existing work in investigating crimes and corruption? Is there a plan to hire more investigators?
Ever since I came into office, we have had a struggle of not having enough investigators. The people that actually go out there in the field and effectuate arrests, investigations, questioning, preparing for trial. We are woefully low on investigators as well as prosecutors. So the idea is that when you have the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Safety, shelter, stuff like that, food. When you're looking at this from a law enforcement perspective, and that's why I said violent crimes. When Guam is inundated with violent crimes, you look at the newspaper. Every day there's violent crimes that are being listed, and it usually starts with a meth addict being pulled over with meth and a gun. The gun opens up. What were they going to use that gun for? So, and obviously it's to get money from we law-abiding people that have resources to go into your house at 3 o'clock in the morning, where I need to go out and talk about the Castle Doctrine to inform everybody when they can and cannot shoot a criminal. And again, when you say criminal, U.S. citizen, non-U.S. citizen, that's what we're talking about. You see that court docket, you see it heavily weighted towards non-U.S. citizens. Hence, as an Attorney General, we direct my limited resources towards that which causes the greatest bang for the buck. And that's where I'm seeing it, is take these non-U.S. citizen criminal aliens out of the mix. You're not going to have future crimes, because the history for the past 30 years has been you lock them up, you let them go, and you're back in the same boat, they're back in the system again. So, and that's the problem with the criminal aliens. We have the same problem with our own people, with the Guamanians, with those that are living in our community. So, yeah.
And just one more question from candidate, sir. Do these investigators have law enforcement training? Do they have specialized training in how to deal with people who have special needs?
Special needs. Okay, well, okay. First, let's talk about, yes, the law enforcement officers, that investigators, they've got the full post-training credentials. They can carry a firearm. They're fully trained on constitutional rights and so forth. Special needs, okay. If you're woke, probably not. The idea is you have to enforce the law like the Lady of Justice, blindly. You break the law, there's a process to take them into court and to find justice, guilt, non-guilt, at the end of the process. Our investigators are clearly police officers. Whether they have sensitivity training, whether they know clearly when to use the firearm, when not to use the firearm, what is self-defense, defense of others, those concepts are all part of your post-training, as well as to hit what you shoot at, right? Knowing when and how to use a firearm. What is search and seizure, those sorts of concepts. So my officers I consider as the cream of the crop, the best of the best, are at the Attorney General's office, especially from a local perspective.
All right, and I think that exhausts all the questions from the online live stream. Just do another call for any last few more. Okay, we have one more question from in person. Here you go.
General, what message do you have for those within our communities who have a diluted sense of sympathy towards criminal aliens who they know inhibit dangerous propensities and will only bring harm to our communities?
So, as an Attorney General, and triage, right? We're in triage oftentimes. You balance. You need to balance. So the harm that the community may experience, that Guam is locking up a certain category of people and then shipping them out, that is, and I recognize it, it's a concern. The higher concern is the person that was victimized by this individual and the harm and suffering and pain that's occurring to this individual that has to deal with that. And of course, I often like to use the word murder. You can't talk to the victim, game over, right? But when you speak to their family members of something that didn't need to happen, right? That is the logical statement. Had this person not been allowed to enter the United States, or had they been arrested and deported when they first did that crime with people like our team here and Officer Agent Sayama, that crime would not have occurred. And it's basic common sense and rational reasoning. You know, so that is the type of discussion that we're having, and that's why I use that word woke. 20 years ago, when I was the attorney, first elected AG, there was no word for woke. It was called, you're either a socialist, a communist, a terrorist. Woke is a word that has infected our community because it's taking you away from reality. Like I've said oftentimes, you become a crime victim, you will see with clarity what I'm saying right now. You sit in your ivory tower behind your gate in your gated community with your nice Mercedes and all that stuff, and you look down upon everybody else from your nice point of view. You don't understand what it is to feel the loss of a crime victim. And unfortunately, everybody that's in this room right now has felt that loss because we've seen it. We've seen those people coming in and crying and trying to find sense from a person that harmed them. So again, this whole proceeding right now is talking about a segment of our community that I can find a quick resolution using our ICE team in our federal government. So, you know, to me, it's a no-brainer. To other people that are in that frame of mind, they're all stressed out, they're worried about the sensitivities or I don't want to say feelings because we all have feelings, but the priorities in life, I guess, is a word.
Thank you. Do you have any more questions? If not,
I will also allow an open, if any of the investigators wish to say anything or my team wishes to comment. I think, is Neil here? He was in court
our
earlier.
Deputy Chief.
So Neil, why don't you just come up and you can explain what you're seeing, and Kareen, you as well. Just kind of share a little bit about what you see in your time on Guam in the positions that you're in. About how the 287 maybe is going to positively impact the community.
I think it's clear that the 287 memorandum with ICE is going to positively impact the community. That the investigators that collectively are participating in this process have collectively hundreds, if not hundreds, of years of collective experience. They're not fresh off the street. They've worked as police officers for so many years before bringing their expertise to the Attorney General's office, and they've served us really, really well in the workup of our cases. And there are so many of those cases. To the General's point, there are so many cases that are ripe